Sorry, I'm asking everyone to press a button. I apologize.
That's okay.
It's okay.
And the
I
recording.
don't think it's you. I think
It's Zoom.
Zoom. Yeah.
Oh, we've got lots of
Hey,
lots of
Simone.
new people, lots of rejoining people. Hello, Megan.
Awesome.
Good to see you again.
Hello,
Hello, Simone.
everyone.
Nice to see you. Your camera not doing the disco today, Megan.
Let's hope it's fixed. Otherwise, I'll turn it off. But I think I fixed it. Yeah.
Are you grand? So welcome everyone. I think we'll get started officially now, and just say that we are super excited to have Egle and Melissa with us, and I maybe I'll let them do their own introductions. But Egle works. I work with Egle at SonarLake. She is the head of design at SonarLake, and does an awesome job there. And I've been with her on the journey of looking at portfolios before, so I might know a little bit about how she looks at portfolios, but I'm excited about that. So I'll stop sharing and I'll let you share, Egle, if you guys are ready and if you want to introduce yourselves in a better way than I could.
Thanks, Mitch. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, as Mitch mentioned, my name is Egle. I'm a head of design at SonarLake. And we have Melissa here as our guest as well. So Melissa and I, we kind of go a long way back. We did go to college together in Ireland, in Dublin. We did our masters together. That's where we met. So Melissa is now managing a design team in WorkHuman. And of course, I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more, Melissa. Give me just a second. I'm going to share my screen.
And how long was that, Egle? How long ago did we go to do that masters? I think it was like 15.
That is not important.
Okay. Yeah, it's been a while.
Back
then there was still no responsive website. So that's how long ago it was.
Yeah. Okay, 1 second. Slideshow. Okay, can you see my screen okay?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Perfect.
Let me just rearrange a couple of things on my screen. Okay. All right, so yes, today we're gonna, talk about what makes a great product design portfolio, UX portfolio, kind of from our own experience, from my experience, from Melissa's experience. What do we look for in design portfolios? And I guess, speaking from my own experience, when we did work as UX designers back in the day as well, like what kind of experiences did we come across as, what kind of resonated with the hiring managers back then. So it's all kind of quite relevant. So we'll try and share as much insight as we can, and hopefully it will help you to create your own kind of great portfolios, and hopefully spark some ideas and, inspire a little bit. That's the hope. So again, that's me. This is probably the 5th time I'm introducing myself. So can you see my Meet Egle screen? Yeah, is that the correct one I'm sharing? Okay.
Yes, it is.
I'm just making sure. So I lead the design and marketing team at SonarLake. I've been there for a bit over a year at this point. My background is, well, it was graphic design initially. That was before UX was a thing. Then I worked in, as a UX designer, product designer. Then I went into product management, which is kind of slightly bigger kind of responsibility areas, like slightly kind of different types of skill sets that I developed over the years. And now I'm back, at kind of being all things design by joining SonarLake more kind of recently. So Sonar Lake in general, just briefly, it's a hybrid company. We do both. We do product development in-house for kind of analytics and telecoms solutions, and then we also partner up with other companies to help them kind of accelerate their roadmaps, to partner up with their engineering teams, product teams, design teams, etc. So at Sonalake, I do a lot of different things because, you know, in a smaller company, generally you tend to do more. In a larger company, you tend to do kind of more focused things in general. So at Sonalake, I, you know, develop kind of strategic design and marketing vision for the company, and then I oversee design services, the brand in itself. I also look after one of our products, which is called Visimetrics. So there's a lot of kind of responsibilities there. And just generally in my spare time, I love hikes. I love pups. I have two, one greyhound and one whippet. I don't know, maybe you can see one of them there, kind of. They're always behind me. I love, you know, cooking, wine, DIY, foods, things like that. So just a little bit about myself. And with that, let's go to Melissa. So Melissa, welcome again to this chat, and thank you so much for joining. Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, well, thanks, Egla, again for inviting me, and Mitch, you know, for considering me to be here. I feel honored. But yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Melissa. I work at WorkHuman. That's I've been there for like 5.5 years now, and I work as a product design manager in a product area called human engagement. It's quite recent though, because in the past I was primarily focused on e-commerce. But now I've moved more towards human engagement, and I just kind of partially support e-com, but I'm not really in the day-to-day. But one of the things that WorkHuman does really is it's primarily a recognition platform. And what this allows people to do is send awards to each other for their work, you know, what they've accomplished, maybe work achievements, and then you can send awards to each other. And we have kind of like a whole suite of applications that, you know, measure productivity, measure engagement, and so forth. So that's what primarily human engagement is all about. Like we do a lot of onboarding, educational elements around features. You know, this is how you use our product. This is how we onboard you. And then once you're more familiarized, I guess, with how the product works, we still reinforce certain activities through email communications or actual tooltips within the product. And we conduct experiments as well. So something very important is analytics for us to evaluate what works and what doesn't work. So we do a lot of experimentation and A/B testing. People that I work with really closely, because this is the thing, a designer is never going to be solo. You're always going to be working with other teams. So I'm going to just to mention a couple, but really it's day-to-day with strategists, researchers, developers, analytics team. And everybody has their own unique skill set that they help bring into how to inform the roadmap, future decisions around features, things that we believe are going to be used as opposed to good ideas, but they're actually validated before we actually make them. So this is really kind of what I do to the day-to-day, but I also have my personal life, and that means I have a big family, not a little bit bigger than Egla's. I have 3 small kids right now, a baby included, 2 dogs, a cat that don't get along. So you can only imagine how noisy my house is. So my biggest dream is every time I get 5 minutes, I just want to have a break on the couch, you know, and actually use the remote control for myself, because the kids are the owners of that. So my 5 minutes are precious. And then in the next line, sorry, Agla, just to kind of give a little bit of background. I think I've been in this journey for a long time. So similarly to Egla when we met in college, but even before meeting Egla, I was in advertising. And it's been kind of like a 15-year timeline of seeing how design has evolved over the years. So, you know, when I was back in the day advertising, everybody thought websites was digital wasn't going to take off. You know, it's like, you're crazy. That's not a thing. People don't care about that. And I wish I could meet them again right now because digital has actually taken over everything. So I think they'll have a very different viewpoint at this point in, you know, time. You know, everything has changed. So yeah, I mean, starting from Flash websites and microsites to HTML to responsive sites, accessibility. Now the conversation is around AI, which you probably have heard a lot about. Everybody's chatting about it. So how are we going to incorporate automation, machine learning, personalization, artificial intelligence? That's where the conversation is right now. So it's just going to be really exciting to see where it leads next, right? In the next 5 to 10 years, we might not even call ourselves product designers, but maybe we have a different title. Who knows? So yeah, just to give a little intro of what I've seen over the years.
Thank you, Melissa. Yeah. Sorry for stealing your precious time to join us and chat with us today. You seem to mention, you know, you want to every minute you get, you want to sit down on the sofa.
Stop! No, this is so much fun. No, I mean literally just like a way of noise. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
I love doing this.
Yeah, so Melissa and I were chatting like a couple of days ago, how should we name this presentation? And I think the description in the Figma right now is, you know, what makes a good UX portfolio. But then we are going back and forth, and I think we actually renamed it to what makes a great product design portfolio. So it's just, this is what Melissa, I guess, is talking about, how it's been changing, how it's been evolving. Like UX is kind of now kind of becoming more in the background, and now it's evolving to product designers. And then in the future, who knows what it's going to be with the whole AI thing. You know, you might just, I actually checked out this new app today, AI powered, I don't remember what it was called, AI powered UI design that has like a Figma a plugin. So basically you can say, hey, create a new like onboarding screen for XYZ and then show it to me in Figma, which is, you know, really powerful. Like I haven't tried it obviously yet, but it's going to be interesting to see how in the future it's going to change and how it's going to evolve. And, you know, we're not anymore going to be designers as we are today, as like we know it today, which is super interesting. Can I ask some people here, some of the people who just joined, what kind of, like, who are you? Are you designers? Are you UX designers? Are you someone who is trying to change careers, maybe going from graphic design to UX design? Are you experienced designers? Like who, you know, what's the audience today? If anyone wants to kind of share.
Maybe I'll break the ice so everyone else can feel comfortable. So at the moment, I'm a UX designer, and I guess I'm still somewhat early in my career, so I'm exploring what I want to specialize in down the line, what area really interests me. So I guess why I'm here today is I want to know what people are looking for, you know, when they're looking at portfolios, but also is looking at, you know, someone who has a specific angle as opposed to someone who just has great skills but is just doing a bit of everything. Does that have an advantage? And maybe I'm overthinking the whole, like I have to kind of go down one route with my career. That's kind of where I'm at.
Interesting. Yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Jamie. Anyone else would like to share? It's okay if you don't want to.
I can jump in. So I actually work with Melissa. So I'm a product design ops manager. So I'm here to support Melissa, but also I've just started a new department at WorkHuman for design operations. So I'm going to be looking into career development. I'm going to be looking into hiring. So I'm really just kind of here to kind of see kind of join the community and have a look at kind of, you know, what I should be looking out for in portfolios as well, in case I'm missing anything.
Awesome. Thank you for joining.
No worries.
I know there's a couple of folks who I've talked to in this group that are also sort of young designers looking for, you know, this might be just before they get their first job, or they might have a first job and they're sort of looking for something. I don't know. Is there anyone I haven't talked to personally that wants to share their story?
Sure, I could share. I'm sort of a career changer looking to get into the field. And I have a background in research and then in creative media. And I've been teaching now for a couple of years in fine art and then creative media in Ballyfermot. And I'm looking to get into UX design, potentially UX research because of my background, but it seems like design is more of a reasonable option. And I have some ideas about what makes a interesting portfolio, but I haven't sort of heard it from the horse's mouth, which is seemed like a good opportunity to do that now.
Awesome. Welcome, Matt.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you for sharing. Okay, so with that, what do you look for in a design portfolio? So the way this is gonna work, like both Melissa and I are gonna kind of have a conversation, have a chat in terms of what Melissa has looked in for a design portfolio when hiring in her team, then I'll do the same. At any point, if you have any question, feel free to stop us and ask a question, like while it's still relevant, because we're gonna go through a few of these kind of questions through the next, 20 minutes, half an hour. So yeah, feel free to ask the question once you have it, or can we type it into the chat somewhere as well?
Yeah,
Mitch?
There is a chat, yeah. You're welcome to
Okay,
type
yeah,
questions
perfect.
in the chat.
Great. So yeah, Melissa, do you want to start? What do you look for in a design portfolio when hiring people for your team?
So yeah, I think it's very interesting. I mean, we've seen quite a variety and range of portfolios over the years as managers, and they're always very interesting. But I do separate. I think I have the ability now to filter out the ones that don't really meet the criteria. So I think I'll explain what the criteria would be when I'm scanning really quickly through either a PDF or a website link. So I'm very interested in projects that have a very clear outline on what their design thinking process may be behind that particular idea or case study that they're presenting. So if you're going to discuss the idea, I would like to understand, okay, what is the problem you're trying to solve with this idea? Who is the target audience you're addressing this idea or solving this problem for? And what data or research or stats, so research, very important, have you collected to inform about the problem? So there's many ideas out there, but not everything is worth solving to, like, you know, not every problem, I guess, is worth solving. So you have to be quite discerning as to what case studies actually make a really good one for business value, right? So there's a problem to be solved, there's an audience I'm solving it for. These are the stats, the research I've collected that informs it exists. And then what ideas have you collected, I guess, based on these observations, you know, whether it's through sketches or through benchmarking, that informs your design decisions, right? Essentially, you're going to bring these ideas into wireframes or potentially an interface. You're going to bring it into high fidelity. And then hopefully in this case study, you'll also be able to test it, whether it's through a usability test or whether it's with interviews with real users, and gather feedback. So it's not enough to say, okay, yeah, there's a problem to be solved. I found the audience, I found the research. This is what I came up with. How did you ensure that your idea was validated with real people, with real users? And that's what I'm interested. It's the entire rounded storytelling behind that case study. So one thing to consider.
Yeah, definitely. I think from my perspective, it's also all about the process. I don't really want to see, say, just the finished product, like just the finished UI, or like one wireframe and here's the UI. I'm not really interested in that. To me, it's more about the process in terms of like how a UX designer like thinks. How do they think about solving a specific problem, right? So it's like that problem solving kind of skill, right? One of the other things maybe I would add to kind of Melissa's thing is like yes, business acumen is very important. You need to have at least a basic understanding of the business. So like whatever case study you're kind of working on, how is it going to make money, right? Or how is it going to save time, or how is it going to add value to the business, right? There has to be some kind of value to the business, you know, either saving time, making money, saving money, whatever. Another thing is, I think, kind of think about the target audience when creating a portfolio in itself. Like, who are you going to present it to, or like what kind of roles are you going to apply for, right? If you're going to apply, I don't know, for a role that is maybe you're gonna, you know, it's a tiny company, maybe a startup, you're gonna speak to a, you know, CEO whose background is like engineering. You might need to adjust some things to fit for that person, versus if you're gonna maybe apply to a bigger organization and like talk to, I don't know, like a VP of product. They might be interested more in kind of like business side. So even like when applying to different roles, think of what kind of like roles are you after, and what kind of companies are you after? Do you want to work in a small company, in a big company? You know, what type of a company? And think, who are you designing this portfolio for, as well as like presenting your actual work. So I think, yeah, kind of like everything what Melissa said is like, it's super, super important. Another thing is like, think about, you know, hiring managers have to go through a lot of different portfolios and PDF and websites and all sorts of things. So like, how can you make yourself kind of stand out of a crowd? And it's a difficult thing to do. But at the same time, you know, don't put in there like every single project that you worked on, every single detail that you want to talk about. Choose the most important things and try to kind of convey the value in a short kind of, you know, in like one page or like a couple of pages, for example, like if you're talking about one use case. So make it short, but make it stand out, which is a very difficult thing to do.
And I think Egla just Mitch is asking here. So Egla and Melissa, when you see a made up project where the designer has gone through a design process, does that increase or decrease their chances of being hired, assuming it's good? If I may take this one, because that's
Go ahead.
That's actually how I got my job at WorkHuman, Mitch. So it was by creating a case study for WorkHuman based on what they do, which is recognition. So I made up my own brief, but this is a key, right? You're not just gonna sit, you know, in a room, make up a brief, create everything without real information, and then present back, you know, ideas. That's not how it worked. It was, okay, it is a brief. What is the problem we're trying to solve? We're trying to increase recognition across what industry? In my case, it was the servicing industry for restaurants. So how do we increase recognition between waiters, waitresses, that type of staff based on their performance, right, of servicing people? But it was a real case study. So I went to a restaurant, a creperie that I'm in love with called Anderson's, and I interviewed the manager and I said, look, I'm doing this for, actually I said for school, so it would be a bit more open to the idea. But I really want to do, you know, a case study about how to recognize your employees, which will increase retention, you know, it will be better for them. So would you allow me to interview waiters and waitresses? Would you allow me to take pictures, of the premises, so I can observe, if there's any pain points when people are interacting with each other, how they're currently recognizing. And can I also interview yourself, right? The manager, you're another persona at the end of the day. So all of this was real, okay? It wasn't just like, yes, I had a lot of sketches of the idea, but then I actually went and do it for real. So it was
Did the
real
real
data.
work.
And then when you put together a proposal, design solution, of the app, I think it was a responsive application. You basically decide, okay, these are the 4 areas that people could grade the waiters on, and then the how knowledgeable were they on the menu, how promptly or timely was their service, bringing the food in, how what was their attitude. 3 questions, submit. The app would recommend what tip to give back to the waiter or waitress based on their performance. And that was the tip that would go to their recognition program. So I presented that back to the manager. The manager was delighted. It's like, if that existed, I would adopt it. So there was a whole case rounded study, that brought real people into it. And when I presented it to Work Human, my manager was very impressed. He said, well, this is not just made up. You actually went through the effort of validating with real people in real scenarios. So I think that's what really makes it different, as opposed to just creating the idea on your own without any external validation, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think, obviously, like maybe some people will, especially who are just starting off, maybe in their kind of product design career, they, might not necessarily have the experience or like use cases to put in a portfolio. And that's fine. Like there are companies who are hiring for, say, junior designers. So like these made up use cases are fine. Like as long as they're not just, oh, I created this app, which is like, I don't know, a transport app to get me to the moon. Like, yeah, that doesn't make sense, right? So that's not gonna get you the job. But like if you do something around the real, like Melissa's example, around the real business case, around the real study, and actually put in some time and effort into this, yes, I don't think from my perspective, I don't think it matters if a case study is like made up or real, as long as it's solving a real problem and you've kind of gone through the effort to actually, do the research, do validation, understand the business,
Yeah. So what I hear you guys saying is the brief can be made up as long as the work is real. Awesome.
I think so.
I think that's how you learn the best, Mitch, because you make a lot of assumptions, of, oh, well, this in the ideal world would work like that. But the reality is that when you really carry out the work, there's so much more you haven't seen or learned about until you do it. And then you have a more rounded picture of, oh, this can be part of the solution and this can be part of the solution. And then you're thinking about all the use cases around your problem solving. Makes it much better than if it's just, what I found on Dribbble, it's a good example on Dribbble. I'll just use that at a prototype. No, that won't tell you how to solve the problem.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. If you have some, like, if you don't have a use case, if you're like starting off or want to get into a different type of kind of design role, yeah, make up your own use case study, but like do the real work. And I think that can really help, especially, let's say, like in Melissa's case, if you're targeting, like if you really want to work at a specific company, try to solve some problem for them that like exists today. One of the other things, just like briefly to add on top of everything else, to me, what's also really important is kind of like a brief, maybe explanation or something around like challenges. What kind of challenges did you experience and how did you solve them? Because that's part of a overall process. Like as a UX designer, as a product designer, you're going to come across all sorts of challenges that can be a difficult stakeholder, a difficult client. That can be, I don't know, some like, you know, technical thing that would take a very long time to resolve. So like, how do you go about solving that challenge? You know, because there's always going to be challenges. So like what I want to see is like, oh, you know, yeah, I had a difficult stakeholder. I did X, and then, you know, this happened. Like, okay, great. That shows me that you're not just gonna sit there like, oh, I have a problem. I'm gonna kind of not do anything about it until somebody else does it. You know, so that's another kind of really important thing to highlight. I had this challenge and I solved it by doing this.
Which comes a lot in interviews, actually, Agla, what you just said. It does come a lot, like, because you can't, I think it's important that you're able to talk about all your success in an interview, but it's also as important to talk about the conflicts you faced and the challenges you face. How have you actually solved for them? Because there's not straight answers. You have to think outside of the box, like you said. I mean, whether it's a stakeholder, it's a communication issue, perhaps, as opposed to, you know, oh, it's the work itself. Maybe there needs to be a functionality to be reviewed with engineers or more research carried out. So there's different skill sets that you need to apply in certain scenarios. And in that interview, that's where you can really make it shine, you know, all the different cases you've been through.
Definitely. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Are aesthetics important? In your experience, Melissa, how do you look at that?
So, are aesthetics important? I will have to say at this point in time, yes, they are already very important. Because, you know, I think, Ella, you remember in the past, there was a very clear split between UX design and then UI design. It was like separate, you know, two different people. They'd have to collaborate very closely, but they were meant to do very different things. And everybody knows that a UX designer has to think much deeper at a level of usability and heuristics and research layers, you know, those deeper layers, right? And then UI is more about the interaction, and it's about the look and feel and the branding incorporated. Essentially, it's what's presented finally, right, to the user. But they're separate skills, they're separate specialties, and now we've found that the industry has pretty much combined them. And that's what we call product design at the moment. It's a combination of UX and UI skills presented in one person. So yeah, two roles have been merged. Now people may say, oh my God, I've been in the UX space all this time, and now how am I going to get, you know, if everything has evolved into more towards product design, and I'm not as familiar with aesthetics, how is that going to impact, right, what I'm doing? So I would say, you know, it's not to worry too much. I mean, at the end of the day, there's endless resources that can help you understand what good universal design principles are. You know, as long as you understand, okay, what is a good design system versus a bad design system? You know, what makes up for you know, good grid system, you know, as opposed to a bad grid system. And, you know, a good grid system essentially caters for responsive behavior, you know, across devices and things like that. Typefaces, can you do a pairing? I mean, there's endless tools out there that help you do pairings, right, with a nice typeface, and understand at an accessibility level what is the hierarchy, I guess, you know, you need for fonts. So, and then also endless tools for creating reliable color palettes, right? That you're not going to mess people's eyes, you know, with bad combinations. There's so many tools out there that already give you really good suggestions around what colors to use, how many of them to use as well. So yes, aesthetics, unfortunately, but I would say fortunately, because at the end of the day, we serve the user, are very important, because people by default are expecting aesthetics to be part of the user experience. So I think now we're kind of going above the step of aesthetics into more of the, you know, how delightful the experience may be, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. I think like in this day and age, yeah, like the expectation from users and from ourselves, like when we use any app or product or anything at all, like we expect a good, not only a good user experience in itself, but also we expect it to like look good, you know, it has to like be somewhat delightful. It has to be like, oh, this is a pretty cool app, you know. So I think in this day and age, it's like really, really important, and the expectation from the end users is like a really, really high. Talking about that, Melissa, do you have any kind of insights into, say, enterprise applications? Because that's a completely different beast, right? If you're doing enterprise applications for, you know, some like bigger company, and generally they might have some like old school UI, maybe not such a great UX. So, you know, some companies are behind kind of times, right? Any kind of insight there? How can
But
we make it,
yeah, it's always been a struggle when there's legacy.
Mm,
We call it the legacy design, you know, from 20 years ago. And then
mm,
some pages are really up to date with really cool designs. And then you clicked on the page that was done 20 years ago and it looks awful.
mm.
But it's a key driver, you know, for the business. We have to bring people to this page. It's like, yeah, it's awful. Like, you know, people are gonna be like, but it hasn't, you know, that's the thing, right? When you're working kind of in an agile environment, like they're not, there's a roadmap, right? So when you're investing time, money, and resources, you have to prioritize certain areas of the product as opposed to other areas. So there, I think there's always going to be that, unfortunately, an enterprise level, that the way we progress is quite slow in comparison to a startup company, a much smaller company. So by the time, you know, everybody has the same, you know, UI that you always wanted, the latest design system,
You're gonna be
guess
out
what?
of date.
Yeah, it's out of date. You have to think about the next thing. So yeah, it's very funny how this works, because even today we were discussing like a UI element that was done 5 years ago, and now we're just looking at a completely different pattern. But you know, the designers who created it are still very much in favor of that 5 year ago pattern. But you know, it's like, guys, you have to move on. That's the past. We have to go and
Yeah.
think about the future now. So yeah, you're always going to have a little bit of an overlap. I don't really know how that can be solved, but if anybody in this group can come up with a great idea on how to solve that.
Yeah, I think every single company like I've been at, it like it's a problem, you know, because especially if it's like a bigger company, you know, say, I don't know, I've been like in Aer Lingus before. Like when I joined, like Aer Lingus app was absolute rubbish. And now it's okay, but there's still a lot of kind of like elements where you can't make it better in kind of a normal time frame. Yes, you can make it better, but you might need to like invest a lot of, you know, engineering resources, a lot of designers, a lot of kind of you know, like back-end developers from like all the kind of Aer Lingus airline stuff and things like that. So it's really difficult to make things like that kind of really useful and like delightful, as we say. But you know, I guess all we can do is kind of challenge that and try and improve things and try to figure out better ways to do things kind of in the future, you know. So I think, yeah, like when it comes to say like UX portfolio in general, aesthetics are very important. As like to me, make sure there aren't any typos, make sure there aren't any double spaces, make sure there aren't any like things, tiny things like that, because for
We
me
do read.
personally,
We
I
do
will
actually
notice.
read. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So, you know, when working on a portfolio, like make sure it does look good as well as it does convey the information that you wanted to convey.
Sorry, just one question here. When designing a portfolio, is the responsiveness of your portfolio itself important? Um, I personally
Like
don't
if
think
it's a,
so. No.
I don't know, like if it's a website, you know, obviously if it's a PDF, it's a PDF,
Oh
but like
yeah, website,
if
yeah.
it's a website, right? So for me, I might, like, what if I open somebody's portfolio on my phone if I'm like on a train and it's not responsive? I go like, yeah, no thanks. So yes, I
Yeah.
think it is important.
Yeah, I've had a creative director before who said, you know, he expected everyone's portfolios to be responsive. This was, as you say, Melissa, just as responsive was becoming a thing that everyone cared about in the agency space. Because I think I was also in agencies around, you know, back when you were as well. Like it's very yeah, it was very much you had to be responsive.
Yeah. So to me, kind of like personally, I think about the target audience, right? So who's gonna look at your portfolio and when? So, you know, for example, if I receive somebody's portfolio, if I happen to be at my desk and I open it, you know, as a, you know, oh, from my email, here it is on the browser, fine. Like I don't really care. I don't check if it's responsive or not. But I can happen to be on a train or somewhere. I have, you know, I don't know, maybe I went to a client meeting and then I was waiting for something and I was checking this portfolio on my mobile phone. And if it's not important, so to me, the experience is not going to be great. And I'm not going to think like, oh, this person maybe just did this for the website, blah, blah. Like, no, I don't care about that. So it's like, maybe this person didn't think about the target audience that, okay, you know, somebody might actually check it on their phone. Maybe somebody's using like, I don't know, like an iPad while traveling somewhere and like checking it there. Like it's very, very probable that that's going to happen.
I would say in the space of applying for a job in product design, what you're saying makes total sense because you're basically, as a product designer, you're saying that you cater for accessibility. You cater for being responsive, you know, inclusive in your design. So that means it reflects the output, right, in your portfolio. It shows that you are already doing that. And to be honest, guys, it's not hard to just create your portfolio in some tool like Squarespace or Wix, you know, that already caters for responsive behavior anyway. So that's actually really easy to do. That's how I have my portfolio. I remember one intern one time she asked me, it's like, but you have to pay every month. And I'm like, look, just play it for the time you're applying for the jobs. Once you get the job, you can pause, you know, the subscription or something, you know, if it's just taking a toll. But there's definitely, you know, so many tools that already cater for being optimal across devices. The one thing I would say for people who are more interested in research, because there's another stream to apply for, which is you know, I guess design, but focus solely on user research. And we actually have a whole team that are researchers. And when you say, oh, but maybe you want to feedback on UI design or UX, they get angry at us and they're like, we're not designers, we are researchers. So when it comes to them, we're not going to be very picky about how they put together, I guess, their CV, you know, or their portfolio, because they're really not designers. They're not there to, you know, cater for any of the things we do. But what I do care about is, like you said, Egla, like very good writing skills, you know, get to the point, like what research methodologies do you use? You know, what success stories do you have around research? So that might be treated a little bit differently. Because it's the nature of their job doesn't really cater for accessibility.
Yeah, I agree. I think like UX researchers are obviously like a slightly different role. You know, and now we might have, I don't know, like motion designers, like content designers, like copywriters, and you know, people like that. And yeah, it might not be as important, but I still think, you know, even if you're going for a role that is like a UX researcher or like a copywriter, content designer, aesthetics is still important to some extent. I still want to, you know, because these people work as part of a design team, and I think at least a basic understanding of kind of, you know, design is needed, not the actual kind of implementation of a design, but I think there has to be a basic understanding of a design, because these people will work with product designers, like UI, UX designers, and they have to have an understanding, like, okay, maybe that's why you made this decision. Obviously, there has to be conversations that are happening, but I think aesthetics are also important for researchers or copywriters, maybe just not as much.
And just a question from Devin here. It says, would you always expect a website portfolio then versus a Behance or PDF? And she's specifically saying for a design job, not a research one.
So again, it depends what kind of role it is. I get it, like, yes, not research, but say if it's like a general product designer, in my experience, like, I'm okay with a PDF or like Behance or something like that. If you're going for something more like, a motion designer, obviously, then that's not going to work in a PDF. But I'm generally like okay with a PDF portfolio. There was a time like I only had a PDF portfolio for like some duration, like a while ago, and I used to apply because like in some cases as well, you might not have a permission to share some of the work that you did with some companies, right? So like you might need to like sign an NDA and things like that, and only kind of agree that okay, I'm sharing this in confidence. Yeah, you can do that with like passwords and stuff like that. But from in my opinion, I think like a website is not necessary. It can be a PDF or like a Behance.
Yeah, I agree. I think I think it depends, like you said, on the role. So we'll forgive the PDF if it's a really amazing PDF, like you have to blow out sweat.
Yeah, I think the content is more important.
The content.
Then yeah, exactly. Okay, how much detail is enough detail? I think we kind of touched on that a tiny bit. But
yeah, it's interesting. I mean, even Simone, who's here, has probably been through it, but yeah, like avoid going into a rabbit hole of process. So there's a thing called process, but there's also a thing called too much process. And going into every single detail of your process could take away from the overall point you want to get across. So just thinking about the time that managers normally have is very, very narrow window between meetings. We're kind of like running around. And then you have this window of, 5, 10, up to 15 minutes in between meetings to actually look at the portfolio and have a good read. But when I say a good read, it's truly a scan through of what the ideas are, what the case studies are. So I once got a portfolio. I swear to God, there were like 20 pages of one case study. It's not to say I obviously thought this designer is very, very passionate about the case study, but I don't have the time to go through every single detail. And there were endless screenshots with sticky notes and boards, and it was lovely. But at the end of the day, I only wanted to know in a summary kind of format, what's the problem? Who's the audience? What's the ideas? How did you solve it? And proof, right? Like how did you test, validate? So that's what I was hoping to look at, but I just had to read every single thing. Then at the end, I still didn't understand after all those pages what was it that we were discussing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you have to be careful.
Yeah, definitely, like short, concise, good story. Don't take a lot of time, like don't steal people's time, don't make them spend more time than it's necessary going through your stuff. But yeah, try to figure out like how to convey the most kind of important information. Another kind of like a good test for that to be, once you have a portfolio, show it to someone, show it to a friend, show it to your parents, whatever, anyone, and ask them like, hey, ask them some kind of questions, do like a validation test, like, what do you think this problem was? Do you think I solved it? Just like do a very quick test, and then you might discover a lot of kind of problems with your own portfolio, and people might be like, oh, I actually don't understand what it was, or oh yeah, I know exactly what you solved for, so that might be a good idea to kind of do a very quick and dirty test with someone before sharing it out there.
And another thing is, if you do go for a framework or a format, a template, try to stick to that template throughout all the case studies, so they all have kind of like a structure to them.
Exactly, the same, so you can scan through like, oh, next case study, I know exactly what to expect.
Exactly. And I've seen structures that, are all purely written with a couple of samples of images. But I've seen other case studies very creative, they embed video and things like that as well. So they literally talk through the case study in the video, which also makes it very engaging. It's 1 to 3 minutes, and it's also a very valid way of explaining, what you did. So be creative too, that.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, just enough detail, but not too much.
Could I
Yeah.
very quick, sorry, could I ask a question about
Sure.
could you give us I don't know if this is unfair, could you give us a realistic sort of time span that we should expect someone to actually look at our portfolios? Are we talking about 5 minutes, half an hour?
So generally, like I would go kind of like this way, right? Like first, say, there's obviously like a few different what's the word? I forgot the word in English, like stages of an interview, right? So first, say if I get like, 20 candidates going for this role, I'll spend like 1 minute for each portfolio, just going through and being like, okay, this one looks interesting, we'll look at it later. This one looks interesting, we'll look at it later. So then I would have maybe, say 5 portfolios that I'm like, okay, now I really want to look into them. And then I would spend like, I don't know, like it's really difficult to say, but it's, it's like, if it really kind of like catches my eye, if I think it's like an interesting case study, if there's like a lot of good info, like I will spend like, I don't know, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes looking into that, like trying to understand, especially like before the interview. So like I already kind of know the work of a person. And then during my interview, I can ask questions like, oh, so in this case study, can you tell me more about XYZ if I wanted to go into more detail? So first kind of, first pass, like up to a minute, not even, then a bit more, like once something catches my eye. I don't know, Melissa, if that's different for you or.
It depends on the period of hiring. Like you said, there's times when there's, the company is looking for many positions, so there are many open positions, and you're getting a whole waterfall stream of portfolios. So yeah, you have to be judicious, okay, there's too many portfolios. We have to do a quick scan to filter out, at different parts, the best ones. So and then when there's too many, yes, I agree with Egla. You don't have much time over a minute to really make a, I know it sounds very unfair, but a quick eye, like, okay, these are the top portfolios that I actually want to invest more time reading through the case studies. By the time you narrow it down, to the top 3, you're truly invested in getting to know the candidates in a one-to-one scenario, right? So like Egla said, you want to prone questions into their case studies, their background, how do they view design? You get a sense of, who they are. And that's another filter, right? That progresses you to the next stage. So let's just say I narrow down from 15 portfolios down to 5, very optimistic here. And I had those one-on-ones. I'm going to narrow down further to 3 people who want to actually go ahead with a challenge. By the way, the biggest drop-off we've seen with candidates is when we mention a challenge. It's probably something that people say, oh, is it really worth me investing in it? But it does tell us a lot about the person when they do challenges. So yeah, you get another big drop off after you say you go for the challenge or not. And truly at the end of the day, you're only going to be meeting with 1-2 people, you know, at the end of the process. And then you repeat again. And I wouldn't want to say like, oh, just because you discarded a portfolio, it's not to say that sometimes I make notes if for that particular position this doesn't really apply, but it may apply for a different position, you know, there might be some skill sets there. So this is not the right time nor the right position for this person because the area just doesn't apply to their skill set. But hey, they're really good at data visualization. They're really good at research. They're really good at, I don't know, ecom. So there might be other areas I keep them in mind for later. Even if I'm not going to look at them now, I still have like my, you know, those kind of selected portfolios for a later stage when it's appropriate.
Simone made a comment, easily scannable, relating to our discussion around, you know, how formatting the portfolio, and also including video, audio transcripts shows you are thinking about accessibility too, which is a great comment. And then Matt asked, do you look at portfolios or CVs first? In other words, if I don't have the required experience, will my portfolios ever be looked at? And I'll just say that I have gotten jobs that I did not qualify for. So I'll just say that.
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, it's so varied, Mitch, the way we've actually had a lot of training managers as well to be like unbiased, you know, sometimes with interviews. Sometimes managers hire based on how much they like a person. It's like, oh, that person's like me, you know, so I'm gonna get along. And then they base their hiring decision based on how much they like a person, which is very biased, right? It's unfair as well. It's like, are you actually taking into account all the other attributes, qualities, skill set, experience, and so forth? And I guess it's important as a manager, a hiring manager, that you're not doing it only yourself, but that you also invite other people who that person may be working with, close collaboration. There might happen, so there might be a one-on-one with myself, a one-on-one with you know, a leading product manager, sorry, or engineer, and then there might be another one-on-one with an HR rep. So it's good that this happens because they are going to collect feedback on different parts of the person, skill set, behavioral aspects, and then you put another second stage, you get designers, for example, that they may collaborate with, and then they're going to have a different type of feedback. So by the final stage, when you are actually discussing the candidate, you get a very round table in that room. That so we do the thumbs up, the intermediate, or thumbs down as our process, and we kind of discuss, okay, everybody at the same time, without talking to each other, right, about what we think about the candidate. Everybody has to say at the same time, yes, no, and we do it all together. And you're going to get, you know, when a candidate is very strong in all areas, it's normally always like a thumbs up because they're looking at it from their area, and we're all in agreement that they're a good cultural fit, that they're going to be, you know, very good to collaborate with, on top of talent, skill set, and so forth. When you get this or this and this, that's when you have to have a discussion as a round table and say, okay, really, what happened? You know, what are you looking at versus what I'm looking at? Maybe from this you go to here, or maybe from this you go down here. But you need to have that discussion. So you are trying to remove any bias, you know, like, have you actually considered this? Oh, no, I didn't consider that. So that's a thumbs up now. So I think that's where more people in an interview can really help you avoid this type of mistakes, like you mentioned, that am I hiring based on my own hunch, or am I bringing other people in with a more rounded view of the candidate?
Awesome.
Hey, next up, how much time do we have? Just mindful.
We're supposed to finish at past, and I just need, but you have all that time. I just need 2 minutes at the end is all, and then we'll
Oh,
be good.
okay.
So yeah,
I know.
take all
I
the
don't
time
think
you
it's
need.
gonna take another half an hour. I'm just
Grand.
wondering if are we supposed to finish about now, or if we still have a little bit more?
No, we got half an hour on the clock still, but if we finish early, that's totally fine.
Okay. Awesome. Okay, yeah. So I think this one we did kind of talk about, what if you don't have a good case study? So, Melissa gave an example of how she applied for, a role in work. Was it Work Human, right, Melissa? Yeah. So I think that's just kind of, reconfirms that yes, it's fine if you don't have a good case study for a particular role. You can make it up, just make sure you do the actual work and you show kind of a value of it. One of the other things, kind of personally, what I did when I was still in college, so I did do a lot of freelance work. I tried to find kind of opportunities like that. And then, once you have kind of one project going on, then somebody else recommends you to somebody else. And then that's how you build up your portfolio as well. Also kind of try and, find opportunities amongst like friends and friends of friends. Maybe there is, someone who has some sort of a shop that might need some kind of product design related stuff that you could do research on or whatever. So there's a lot of opportunity out there, and it's just kind of a case of being more proactive and like finding that opportunity. Yeah, Melissa, anything else you have to kind of add to that? I think your example was just like the best example, like, oh, what if I actually don't have a good case study? Can I make one up? Like, yeah, totally. That's how you got the job, right?
I mean, like, I think I was just reading a comment here from Matt around, do you look at portfolios or CVs first? In other words, if I don't have the required experience, will my portfolio ever be looked at? I think experience, all of us, after school, we didn't really have any experience. So we have to gather that experience from somewhere. And that's where this is so important, that you're proactive in finding ways, light ways, right, of gathering real, small case studies. I mean, I remember, Egla, when we were discussing, towards the end of the masters, and you were doing this lovely website for your dad, like to actually advertise his business, garage. And it was such a great way of saying, like, I'm going to put this in my portfolio. It's a real client, even if it's my family member, it doesn't matter. I am solving these problems for him and creating awareness of his business. That brings value to a person. That is real. And I've done the same. Similarly, I've been, look, if I go to a school and discuss, the problems of the school, it would be great if we had this. Oh, brilliant. I can help you. It doesn't always need to be a paid job as such. I know freelance, definitely you have to get paid if you're doing freelance. But if
don't do things for free.
Never do anything for free.
Experience. Yeah.
That's a big lesson. But if it's a friend or a relative that essentially it's helping, you're both helping each other out because they have a problem, you're solving it, you're going to use it in your portfolio, that is a different thing. But yeah, you can get experience. I mean, you don't need to be hired in a company to say you have experience. You can gather experience in different ways. Like we have a designer at Work Human, Chacho, Ignacio is his name, and he never went to college. Okay, so he didn't have the same background the majority of product designers have, but Chacho is all about, like, he's a hustler. He's like, I'm gonna learn, I'm gonna be self-taught, and he took loads of courses. He's a Figma whiz, right? So he really knows the ins and outs of the tool. But because of that self-taught, proactive nature, I mean, he went to the local gym, he went to the local restaurant, he went to the local this. He put together an amazing portfolio. And when he approached us in Work Human, first thing we saw in his CV, well, he doesn't have any degree, right? But then you look at his portfolio and it's absolutely stunning. So that doesn't really deviate from his willingness to say, I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna show you that I can bring value. This is how I do it. I know I didn't go to college, but still there's something important I can do for this company. And that I think stands out a lot, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I agree. It's like, you know, yes, sometimes you might not have a required experience, and that's okay, but it's kind of trying to find that, like, a way to show how valuable you can be to a specific company that you're applying. You can add a lot of value even if you don't have a required experience. It's just kind of trying to find a way to show that, you know, yes, I can bring a lot of value to the company. Don't have this experience, but I have very similar experience doing something else. And hey, look at me, I did X, Y, Z. Yeah, okay. I think we're on to the next question. What do you
probably already tapped into as well, but
yeah, I think we touched on everything. So
we've touched on every
you know.
topic, but guys, if you have questions, just put them in the chat. I can tell you about the stages a little bit though, because that's again, when you do have very good CVs and very good portfolios, that's not really the end of the journey. It's just essentially a business card telling us that we're open. We're basically telling you we're open for a chat. Let's have a chat. Let's get to know each other. That's the next stage, right? And during that stage, either it's one manager or two managers normally in the one-on-one. So it's like 3 people in that meeting. And we do have a little bit of you know, a criteria as to how we interact with that person. So of course, what's your work ethic, right? When you're thinking about design, what brought you into the design career? Like, why did you decide you wanted to be a designer? I mean, you'd be surprised. I remember one interview, a designer told me, "Oh, I'm in it for the money." And I'm like, oh my God, okay, there's something stunning here. Like it really, first candidate ever said that to me. It's like, well, you know, but surely it's not just the money that makes you want to be a designer, because if money is your trigger, you know, that tells me it's not a vocation, right? Because it's really about the journey and sticking with the journey in a long term. It's a marathon, as I say. So if the money is the motivation or the factor to get into this space, I pretty much don't advise the person to be there in the first place, because there's a lot of ups and downs, a lot of frustration. You have to be able to sail through it all. And money, believe me, doesn't bring you any of that. So it has to be really a heartfelt thing, vocational thing, that I'm really passionate about the subject. I really want to bring value into this space, almost like a missionary thing. So that is something we can spot at an early stage when speaking to designers. And I think another very, very important aspect is your qualities as a designer. Like in terms, people call it soft skills. I call them just good qualities as a human being, as a person. You know, are you collaborative? Can you work in teams? Are you nice to people? You know, we've had arrogant people in the past, and I mean, arrogance doesn't look good, guys. You can be a superstar, but if you're gonna talk down to people, it's a big no in our space. I mean, we're all smart, we're all talented, we're here to discuss, you know, have a grown-up discussion, but we're not trying to put others down and show, oh, I'm better than you. You know, that doesn't go with us at all. So we also look for things like that. So when I see designers, especially in this early stage, you know, I please take me through your case study or this piece of work, you know, what were your challenges and so forth. And I really tune into how they talk about the work, especially if it was a team case study, because there's the individual case studies, but there's also very important team case studies. And if they never acknowledge the other roles, you know, for the case study, what did the team do to contribute to the case study? and they just refer to, well, I did this, I did that, it was my success, it was my ideas, you know, that tells me a lot about you. Are you mean you did everything in this group case study, so the whole thing would fall apart if you weren't in it? You know, that's a red flag to me, because you're always going to be working in teams with many departments. You're not going to be a solo star designer. I mean, for that, I really think there's a startup mindset, you know, and startups are small and they're very small teams. You can definitely be a star there. But if you're going into a bigger company, when you start interacting with other designers, it's a different mindset of the I, and then it becomes more the we. How do we work with each other? So those are a couple of things. What do you
Definitely.
look for in a design?
Definitely. No, couldn't agree more here. I think, you know, you can have a most amazing portfolio, most amazing experience, worked in the most amazing companies ever. You know, can I swear in here? No. You know, if you are
I'll bleep you.
you're a dick, you're a dick. Basically, don't be a dick, you know. Be a good person, right? Be a joy to work with and to chat to. Like, yeah, it's work. You have to solve problems, you have to do good work, but also just be a good person and, you know, be a joy to work with. And I think that's one of the things that we look for, you know, as well as kind of skills. I think one of the other things, especially like if someone is going for more junior role, it's like how well can you take feedback, and like how teachable are you? Will you say like, oh no, I think my design is best and I refuse to hear any other feedback? So like, can you like are you willing to learn and like, you know, learn new things and kind of grow? So say like, you know, if, as I said, if you're like more junior, that kind of like ambition, that growth, like, okay, I know that I don't know all the things, that's okay. And I'm open to feedback, and I'm open to learning, and I'm open to becoming a better designer. Yeah, like soft skills, I think Melissa, like general skills, like, yeah, be a good person, super important, you know, because nobody wants to work with a person, right? You know, you wake up in the morning, you have a meeting with someone, like, oh, I don't want to talk to this person. Like, nobody wants to do that, you know. So, you know, be a joy to work with, basically. I think, yeah, like ambition is important to me, kind of like the self-starter people who want to solve problems, who are not just sitting there waiting for things to happen, you know. Also, I think what's important for me, it's like problem solving skills that aren't design related. As I mentioned earlier, you know, how do you deal with a difficult stakeholder? How do you deal with your boss? Are you open? Can you give feedback to someone that is not necessarily a positive feedback, but like in a constructive way? Are you like a good collaborator? You know, so these kind of like softer, like soft skills, people skills are also super important, you know. And I think, I don't know, I think when I was kind of just starting off and I was, you know, just newly baked graphic designer at the time, I used to be almost like afraid to maybe talk to, you know, hiring managers. Not afraid, but there was some kind of something holding me back, like, oh, maybe I will say the wrong thing or something. Like, no, like it's fine, you know, just share your ideas, share your things, be a self-starter. It's like, you know, we're just people after all, and you know, just have a good time, you know. At work you can have a great time. So I think, yeah, that's super important, like the type of person, you know, the culture fit, like how easy or difficult it is to work, and how easily can they like take any feedback and improve and work on stuff.
They're the designers that actually make it in the long term, guys, because, you know, the more difficult you are to work with, the more isolated you become. And this isolation essentially brings you in a little box, you know, and you're invisible. You know, even though you were shouting a lot, you are put in that box because nobody wants to collaborate with you or talk to you. It's just because you're on the defense, right? So people only want to work with other people who are open-minded and flexible, adaptive, and then you grow from there. But yeah, we find that people who don't collaborate, you know, they become more and more isolated. Not intentionally, it's just human nature. So so there's a question here from Jamie. Hi, Jamie. So how do you work around showcasing your work when the cool projects are behind non-disclosure agreements? I think, Ekla, you have more experience in this space than
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
I have, so previously I worked in like SAP, and I was part of this kind of like mobile innovation center. And then we used to do a lot of concept work, a lot of demos, a lot of kind of, you know, future thinking, cool things. And we used to work with all these like cool companies like Formula One and like Prada and like whatever. None of it I could share. None of it at all. So what I used to do is like I made a PDF, and then I would just get the, you know, the company who I'm applying to actually sign an NDA agreement with me. And then I would not send them a portfolio. I might send them some kind of teaser, maybe. Here is like a kind of thing that maybe you can find online. But then I would only share my portfolio while I'm talking to them, like during the interview. So I would explain like, hey, I actually cannot share this, but I would still like, you know, either get them to sign like an NDA agreement, like it's just fine. Usually companies be like, yeah, fine. And then share it during the conversation. I don't think there is any other way around it.
Simone, experience from your side on NDAs?
Sure. Yeah, I used to work for Facebook, so I couldn't share any of the work that I did. So what I do is I'd say that in my kind of cover letter, my email when I was applying for jobs, saying like this is where I worked. Obviously for NDAs, I can't share anything, but I can share it live in an interview. So I used to just do that as long as, you know, they wouldn't record the screen or anything like that, and I could just kind of walk them through it that way. And I found employees, like prospective employees, were always happy with that. Or employers.
Yeah, it's a tricky
definitely.
space. You have to protect yourself for sure. Unfortunate though. Are you going through that, Jamie, at the moment?
Well, there's a project or two that I've worked on that I think is like really cool, and I had quite a deep involvement with it, but it's like, yeah, it's very people who would get.
I think we are losing you. Your connection is not great.
Kind of frustrating. Yeah,
you're back.
Oh, hang on. Let me see if I can. Okay.
You're back.
Just because of who signed that NDA with that project, they're just, you know, I wouldn't want to mess with them basically. And it's just, I really want to showcase that work, and I'm wondering if I could genericize it or just do something to use, because I did a lot of really like deep work with that project. It was like full on like information architecture stuff, like big enterprise like level UX, and I don't know, maybe I could take it to something else, but I guess it's more like, you know, do I need to show every single detail to be able to show that I can do that stuff, or, you know, what do I need to show in that?
To be honest, one of our brightest
I'm not just saying.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, don't mind me. My connection's shaky. It's all good.
No, I was just going to say, Jamie, we have a very, very bright designer in the team. And he similar to you, he's excellent at UX specifically, I think way more than UI. And he had done a lot of finance based apps, you know, big banks and stuff. And but I think his key differentiator, not only is he a great UX designer who had non-disclosure agreement, he couldn't share with us anything, but he was able to articulate it very clearly in the interview, even though he couldn't really share with us, even if it was just the logo of the bank on the screen. It was very clear to us how he solved the problems, what value he brought. It was all spoken, but it was just crystal clear as day, you know, and we hired him on the spot just because we didn't have to see it. We knew he was good in UX because of the speaking, how he would talk about the problem solving. So communication.
Okay, that's hopeful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, yeah, maybe there is a way that you might potentially like make it more generic and just talk about, you know, I have solved the problem X for a company in, you know, telecommunication space. I've solved the problem blah. This is what I did.
Yeah.
I think it's
Okay,
worth
I'll think of something around that.
Yeah, like I guess, yeah, I'm not sure if anybody's applying right now for jobs. Have you found it difficult at the moment, the whole job landscape? Maybe it's not this crowd, but the ones listening to the audio. But yeah, I have no idea right now what the job landscape is looking like in Ireland specifically. I mean, we have heard of the tech layoffs and so forth, but I would say even despite of that, you know, there's design teams are always on the lookout for talent, you know, regardless of the recession or whatever, like, because even if it's not right now when I can hire you, just the fact that I know about you and at a later stage I can contact and network, you know, that also matters a lot.
Definitely.
So don't get, you know, disappointed if it's, oh, I'm not landing the job right now. The networking is crucial. At a later stage, you'll be contacted.
Awesome. Okay.
Awesome. Well,
That's
thank you
all.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're all in the same community. We're all passionate about what we do. So we stick out for each other, guys. So best of luck with your endeavors.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for coming through on this. Sorry, my internet died a little bit at the end there. It was perfect the whole way through. But we really, really appreciate it. We'd love to have you back, Melissa and Egle. Come and be part of our normal meetings where we just
just love to be a member in general, you know, just I'll learn from other designers and that would be awesome.
I'm sure we'll learn from you as well. I've collected a bunch of resources. I hope all the links work. They should be okay. Go ahead and play. There's Hyper Island Toolkit's probably the most interesting thing for me personally. It's a bunch of resources on how to collaborate with your team. There's something called Stinky Fish, which is a really interesting approach, which has just the funniest name.
Here of Stinky Fish. Yeah,
Stinky Fish really is wonderful.
It's great, yeah.
Sarah Doody, who's a wonderful YouTuber who's very passionate about getting people to up their design careers, if that's an English sentence. A bunch of other random stuff that I found that I hope you'll like. But thank you guys so much for coming, and thank you so much for sharing all that knowledge with us. And we look forward to seeing you again in the next thing.
Lovely.
Thank you for having us. Thank
Awesome.
you, Melissa.
Enjoy
Well done.
Pleasure.
See you
Thank
soon.
you. That was
Thank you
great.
very much.
Bye.
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 Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.